Italy against Ireland, folks. Six Nations, round 3. Italy, none from 2 thus far, but having looked not too bad in their first 2 games, despite the losses, pushing France closer than anybody expected and winning one of the halves against England, although that's not how rugby works in terms of the overall result. And then Ireland just going full guns blazing, to be expected as to, that number 1 ranking. Ireland are 2 wins from 2 games and 2 bonus points for a bunch of tries. So, we're going to go through some lineups, some stats, recent history predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. We will start with the Italians, and they've kept things relatively stable from the side that played a couple of weeks ago against England, with one particular name back in the lineup, which is pretty pleasing. But the front row is Fischetti, Nicotera, and Ferrari. Ferrari comes in for Riccioni. They swap places, so there's no huge changes. Ferrari played in week 1. Riccioni, they said, wasn't ready in week 1 because he's only just been back into the Italian lineup. Then Riccioni was kind of thrust into the tight head spot for game 2. A little bit of pressure against the English scrum, so it's back to the bench for him, and Ferrari gets the starting spot. So either way, man, the Irish scrum's going to bring it. So if it's Ferrari or if it's Riccioni, they're going to need to be on song. Cannone and Ruzza is a bloody good lock-in duo, man. I'm going to keep going on about this. I don't know why. Ruzza, I think, is like the top line-out guy in the entire Six Nations. He's really, really a very skilled player, man. And then Cannone has been moving his body around the park. Not so much as Sebastian Negri. If you're looking at the individual stats, like he's the Italians' top ball carrier, certainly a huge work rate guy, and he's going to be kept busy with the Irish back row as well, but he's been impressive. Lamaro and Lorenzo Cannone there alongside him. So the Italian back row, I think ever since kind of November, Kieran Crowley's kept things relatively consistent. These 3 guys seem to be his preferred. That's 3 weeks in a row anyway that he's played them, at least in the Six Nations. Varney and Garbisi is the 19 combo. So Tommaso Allen, who ran the show from 10 for the first 2 games, drops to the bench. Remember when Garbisi was injured? Garbisi played, I think, for Montpellier from the bench the other day, I read somewhere. So, he's back fit, and I think that's a good thing, man. Like, Tommaso Allen's not a bad player, but I do think Garbisi's going to add a little bit of extra spark to the Italian attack. So fingers crossed he's 100% fit and is able to go for the majority of the game. Menoncello shifts to the number 12 jersey from the wing this week, and Brex is still there at 13. That means our man Pierre Bruno, who was on the wing for the first game, on the bench for the second game, is back on the wing this game against Ireland. And then Padovani continues on the right wing. Capuozzo is there at fullback, and he's been getting a lot of plaudits, and rightly so, man. Like, he's one of the more dangerous attacking threats in the Italian backline, especially with Monti Ioane not playing for them in the Six Nations campaign. They do need that kind of X-factor player. And in terms of individuals, man, like, he's been cranking through the run meters, he's been breaking tackles, so he is one guy that the Irish defence will certainly be very mindful of. The bench, Bigi, Zani, Riccioni, like I mentioned, Iacchese, Pettinelli is back in because, unfortunately, Jake Pelledri, who's just had a horrendous run with injuries, finally got some game time for the Italians and is now injured again. So that guy just can't catch a break. Fusco, Morisi, and Allen are the other replacements. So interestingly, this is the first time in the Six Nations we have seen the Italians go with 3 back replacements. First 2 games, they've been doing the whole 6-2 split. And with the Irish forward pack, I would have thought maybe this is one where you keep going with the extra forward, but apparently not. I guess part of that is maybe the worry that Garbisi, if he's only played a little bit of rugby, is more likely than not going to be replaced at some point. So, bit of a gamble. For the Irish, they have, this is Andy Farrell's version of changing things, and even he admits in the press conference he didn't change a lot. Like, he's a very, very consistent picker of squads. He doesn't chop and change just for the sake of things. He likes to keep things very consistent, and for him, this is kind of changes. A lot of changes. When I say a lot, it's still not many. Porter, Kelleher, and Beelum. That's the front row. I remember Herring went off in that last game when he took a whack to the head. So Kelleher gets a start. He may have been getting a start anyway because Kelleher has looked the business. And I think in terms of the pecking order would probably naturally be above Herring. But, when he was just coming back from injury himself, Kelleher, it kind of made sense not to chuck him straight in the deep end, but he ended up getting a lot of minutes in that last game and looked really, really good. Bielam is still there filling in for old Tyke Furlong, and he's looked impressive, man. He's got himself a couple of try assists and just been scrummaging really well, which is pleasing. So that just gives me a little bit more reassurance for future Irish campaigns, because sometimes it feels like, and part of it is due to Andy Farrell's lack of rotation, that like a lot of the eggs are kind of in the one basket. In that case, it'd be the Tyke Furlong basket. But Finlay Bielam's been looking really good. Ian Henderson comes in for Tyke Byrne, who is obviously out injured. That's not a bad guy to be able to bring in, alongside James Ryan. So that's a big-looking second row. And James Ryan's been getting through a bunch of work defensively, so that's kind of to be expected. That's what he does. Caelan Doris shifts to 6. And speaking of work rate, goodness gracious me, that guy's been getting through tons of carries and meters and whatnot. He's looked really, really hard to play right now. So his battle up against the Italian back row is going to be a fun one. Van der Fleer and Conan are 7 and 8. So Conan gets a start at 8. They're hard to come by when Doris is playing at 8. So he needs to make the most of that for sure. The biggest talking point, I guess, about the Irish squad is Craig Casey and Ross Byrne getting a go at 9 and 10. They asked Andy Farrell about it in the press conference, and he basically said they've both kind of earned the right to start with the way they've been training and the way they've performed from the bench. So certainly both guys, Casey and Byrne, have their detractors, certainly from people who maybe non-Leinster fans aren't the biggest fans of Ross Byrne, and non-Munster fans aren't the biggest fans of Casey, because there's other guys who played 9 and 10 in Ireland, certainly, who would be putting their hands up. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's competitive. So both of these guys could use a big game if they are going to really kind of establish themselves as that probably a backup with Sexton not playing, Gibson Park not playing, and Murray on the bench. So, but either way, wish both of them well, because those Six Nations starts are pretty hard to come by. Bundy Aki, speaking of starts, he gets a crack after being off the bench for the first 2 rounds. Ringrose still there at 13. Hansen and Lowe are the wings, and Keenan is still at fullback. So in terms of guys who have come in bolted outside the 23 and into the starting 15, there's none. All of the changes are either positional or guys being promoted from the bench. You do see a couple of guys come into the squad from outside. Dan Sheehan's back, which is pleasing after seeing him miss 1 round through injury. Kilcoyne, 2 still there. Ryan Baird comes in, which is another pleasing one. Obviously, with Byrne being out, there is a spot for him to fill, and he's been kind of unlucky not to get more time. But again, the Irish back row and second row where he can fill in are really competitive. O'Mahony drops to the bench. Murray drops to the bench. Jack Crowley is in. There was some talk with Joe Carberry having been recalled and travelling with the squad to Italy that he might even start. He might be on the bench, but no, it is just kind of a squad position for Carberry. So Crowley still above him in the pecking order for this game anyway, and then McCloskey drops to the bench. So yeah, it's not really a heck of a lot of rotation, to be honest, and some of it's injury enforced with Byrne and probably with Sexton's groin, although I believe they probably would have rested Sexton anyway, or at least benched him. But still pretty consistent for a side which you could have just changed the whole 23 for Italy, but they don't want to risk anything. They want to keep things going. Statistically, for both these sides, it's a weird one, because last year Ireland were a side that scored more of their points in the second half than the first half. They're a hard team to live with for 80 minutes, but interestingly, in the first 2 games this year, it's been the first half where they've been really piling on the points. So Italy are going to need to be on fire early, because if you remember in the last game, Italy conceded most of their points against England in that first half. So, yeah, this is not the time to be doing that. You don't want to be having to try to chase this Irish side down. Interestingly, Ireland have conceded, though, about as many clean breaks as they generate, but they haven't been conceding the tries. So they're really a clinical side and a very hard side to break down. They conceded 2 tries in the first 2 games, but as I said, still managed bonus point wins in both of theirs. For Italy, they're playing with enough ball. They certainly are, quite happy to play with the ball, but especially in their own half. Territory has been a little bit of an issue for them. Partly that seems to be strategic. They're quite happy to try and run the ball out from kind of all areas where you wouldn't maybe expect it in a test match, but Yeah, that comes with a bit of risk, and sometimes you'll get punished for it. Also, they conceded some more tries against England. That's just a basic one. They're going to need to be better. Ireland would have certainly taken note of how susceptible the Italians were to tries from 5 metres out, and it would be not surprising at all to see Ireland target that area. We've already talked about the individuals: Negri, the carrying machine, Doris, and also Keenan for the carries for the Irish. Capuozzo and Keenan are like first and third respectively for run meters in the Six Nations. So yeah, lots to like about the individuals in this one. The recent history between the sides, well, the last 5 all go to Ireland with an average score of 42-12. So it tends to be pretty big scorelines. Last year it was 57-6 over in Dublin, keeping in mind that the Italians had to play the majority of the game with 13 guys on the field. So that one is maybe a little bit of an anomaly, but prior to that, 48-10, 50 points to 17. So yeah, there's been a couple of times when the games have been a bit closer, but I seem to recall Joe Schmidt anyway sending somewhat rotated sides to play the Italians. So maybe that's also part of the reason you get more of like a 29-10 or a 26-16 in there as well. Predictions-wise, the bookies have got the Irish as comfortable winners, 22 points, and the Rugby Forecast algorithm says 25. So Ireland predicted to win it basically by a bundle. It is on at the Stadio Olimpico, which is in Rome. You got Mike Adamson from Scotland as the ref. We'll see how he goes. Hopefully no real moments of controversy. It's on ITV in the UK, RTE in Ireland. If you guys are outside of those territories like me and you want to watch it, you can use a VPN for both those services, ITV and RTE. Pretty convenient if you want to watch yourself some Six Nations. ITV's got the Rugby World Cup as well, so a pretty handy service to have. I'll put a link down to ExpressVPN down in the description. That's the one that I captured that footage with. It's pretty straightforward. If I can do it, most people should be able to do it, I would imagine. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts. 2:15 kickoff, 3:15 local time, which is going to be pretty stupid o'clock over here in NZ. I would imagine, is it about 3 in the morning or is it 2 in the morning? Not a nice wake up time, but hopefully it's a nice watch. I will go to bed super early on Saturday night here in New Zealand because we're a day ahead. The game's a day behind, and watch this one. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts. Do you reckon Ireland are going to go and just blow Italy off the park, or do you think Italy, with some encouraging signs from their first 2 games, can put it to be a bit more of a competitive scoreline? You guys let us know your thoughts, and yeah, talk to you guys again soon. Yeah.